Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there once again, welcome to another special Lemon Amiga Playguide and review. It's the last one in the series, and for this one it's Vektor Storm, developed by Carl W. Moore and published by iNovatronics in 1992. Vektor Storm is a vector-based game, and it begins with a vector-based Starfield intro. The game begins with a vector introduction and some hard rock music. You can see one of my scores on the high score table, and this was played maybe last year in the Lemon Amiga Games competition, where we all had fun playing this clone of the Tempest arcade game. You can see a very nice Starfield in the background and some great music as well. The game credits is called W. Moore, and you can see graphics by Denise, sound by Paula, and supervised by Agnes and Gary. Let's press that fire button and let's check this game out. As you can see, Tempest is a fairly basic game, but the core game mechanics are there from Tempest, the arcade game, and we also gain some bonuses as well.
Engage.
On each level, the aim is to simply survive, and we gain some V icons at the very top of the screen, which started off with 3 and now we have 2, which are our lives. At the bottom of the screen you can see we have Deathblades, and by pressing the spacebar we can kill everything on the immediate screen, and that will send a shockwave of energy through that entire screen and kill everything upon it. But we only have 3 of those, and we'll have to collect more, so we have to use those sparingly as we get through these levels. bottom of the screen it says Rigs 3, and that is supposed to be our outriggers, or maybe our power strength, and that will be reduced when we get hit. And you can see when we die we will lose both of those outriggers, and they will fortunately increase our firepower only whilst we have those. And when we exit the level we have to beware of the spikes which crawl up from the middle of it, and the very helpful message appears, beware of spikes. And if we collide into those, of course we'll die. You can see at the very end of the screen is the end of the level boss, and we can't kill it quite yet. We have to get through a number of screens first, and just like the arcade machine, we'll have to avoid its projectiles, its lasers, and also the vines as well, which we can shoot with our laser.
Engage.
You may notice it still says Stage 1, and that's because every stage is made out of a number of levels. This is Vortex 5 of Stage 1, and at the end of this we'll get to tackle the boss, but first we'll have to destroy these waves, and sometimes we can even rebound things towards that boss and harm it, and collecting the E's in this case will give us an extra life. And it's always worth collecting those power-ups on every single level, and the orange ones can basically jet out towards that screen when we move into the direct line, and sometimes it's pretty easy to die if we move into the direct line of enemies. After the enemy wave we will find lots of breeze blocks heading towards us, which we don't think cannot knock out, and we'll have to avoid them, and that's why I'm not firing, but we'll have to fire to knock out that spinning end of level boss, which has to be destroyed to move on to the next level. At the top of the screen you can see the password, and that's supposed to be an easy password to remember. And yes, let's just avoid these vines, because if we collide with those at this point then we'll still die and we'll still write off that level. And every single one of those reminds us of Tempest, and this is a nice triangular shaped one with a different end of the level boss, as you can see, and this time things move just a little bit quicker even on the Amiga 500, but when the action gets packed it does slow down just a little bit. All of the bonus objects will appear at a different angle, as denoted by the squares in the grid you can see, and the pattern of the shape of that thing sometimes makes sure that we cannot collect everything, so that we miss the extra life simply because that was on a different pattern than we were on, and I didn't recognise that at the time. But using our smart bomb effect known as the Deathblades to great effect, we can use that by pressing the spacebar, and that's pretty unnerving when you're supposed to be attacking enemies in this game, but it's a great end of level sequence. On this stage, if it fires anything green towards us, we can fire upon those and send those back towards the enemy, whereupon the enemy will go ow, And the amazing sound effects in this game remind me of a Jeff Minter game. And yes, let's just collect the lasers, or at least let's just miss the lasers in this case, which would have made this level a little bit easier. At the start of the level, I like to mow those vines down a little bit, and that reduces that hazard, and it's pretty generous sometimes with the extra lives and the power-ups, so one player can go for quite some time. You can see a W means a warp, and that means that we get to move on to the next vortex. So the levels are really moving through them now, and it's really great to see all these different vortices that we can fire on, slowly getting harder and harder as we move through them with a really great difficulty curve. And so it means that even novices can be fluky, and it means that even professionals can find some random danger, which means they get shot.
Engage.
The speed of this game is quick, and I think it's quicker than the Tempest 1200 that we got. And there isn't too many of these clones on the Amiga. I managed to find Descender in the public domain and also Microbes. And of course, Tempest clones were pretty outdated by the time we got to the Amiga. And the Amiga was capable of much bigger and better things. After our last life, we will get to move on to that high score table, and we also have one continue in the game as well. Vektor Storm comes on just one disc, and it will helpfully save our high scores to the very same disc, and then it will helpfully ask us if we want to continue. Let's press yes, and let's see if we can continue from where we left off on that Amiga 500. I really love the simple gameplay mechanics of these early arcade games, and all you have to do is to stay in the right area, which I spectacularly failed to do yet again, to collect the turbos and the extra power-ups and everything else that we can collect. And I really do think that this game is really good for the Amiga 500. It's fast and smooth, and it gives us a thrill ride as well. It's not very easy, and it's already making our life very difficult indeed, and it's great that it gives us a pause before it takes us off that screen so that we can avoid all these green instant killers. And hopefully this is Vortex 10, so maybe we'll get to face the final boss after this. But you can imagine that this is a pretty hard level as a result. Vektor Storm was reviewed in a number of magazines, and their major concern was the speed of this game and the fact that it slows down and speeds up occasionally, which can be helpful, and this really is only on the very bare limit of the Motorola 68000's capabilities, so really it shouldn't slow down too much. That was their major criticism, and that's why this game was downgraded. So in 1992, maybe the best playing experience was to play this on an Amiga 1200, and this being 1992, that would seem the minimum requirement. To show the game off at its very best, let's this time choose the 040 CPU, and let's see if that makes any difference to the speed of the game, and then we can't have any more criticisms about the game slowing down and speeding up. On an Amiga 1200 it's fast and smooth, so on an 040 it doesn't really get much faster and smoother because this game is hard coded to a certain speed, and if it didn't then the 040 would be so fast it's unplayable, but you can see this basically maxes out the speed which it's hard coded to be, and that's fair enough because it means we can still play it. And I managed to still die on the very first level, the very first screen of this entire game, and I'm not quite sure how many levels there are, but there are quite some, as you can imagine. Let's just collect that laser, and that makes the job much easier, and I can't help feeling those swastikas moving towards us are a little bit unnerving, but apart from that, this game has tremendous atmosphere.
Engage.
It's also great to see that those power-ups continue from level to level, so if you have managed to pick something up it will continue. And I'm not quite sure whether the lasers actually split into 3 if we get that power up, and how many different weapons there are in the game. I'm not quite sure, I think there are only 2, but I'm sure that this is pretty similar to the original game. Not that I ever played it in the arcades, because by the time I was playing arcades they had a little bit better graphics than this. But you can see, for a game which is perhaps a public domain title on the Amiga, there is nothing wrong with this, and for a quick blast for 10 minutes, it's fun, and it's very fun to get back to something that's quite simple, and it's not an idiot shooter and a driving game or a space simulator which is going to take hours and hours and hours to play.
Double shot. Engage.
The only other small detail about this game, which saves this from being an instant classic, was the fact that it was released at full price for £29.99. That's right, 30 quid for this game, and that's why nobody bought it, and that's why it doesn't remain an instant classic. If they'd have given this away, then they might have stood a chance, but unfortunately with that high price tag, who would even go out of their mind to buy this when Sensible Soccer was only £25.99? It blows my mind, but for 30 quid it's not worth it, and that's why this game is not remembered on the Amiga. So for the final time, let's press fire again, let's continue from where we left off, and let's see if we can get through this hard boss level. And I really do love these hard boss levels, but they are tricky, as you can imagine, and with this high speed action going on, it means that players have to be quick, and they sometimes have to use up all their specials to make sure that they get through it. And I don't think it gives extra lives at score checkpoints, so you'll just have to pick those up.
Engage.
The only difference with higher CPUs is the fact the graphics move more quickly. It means the sound effects are slightly out of sync, and that's no bad thing, and I really do love the exiting of every vortex.
Engage.
All of that brings us on to the scores, and you may notice that Amiga format gave this literally an inch of column space and wrote this game off immediately, giving it 60%, which is a good game, but nothing special. And Amiga Power actually gave this a full page magazine review, and yet they still come out with the same outcome, 60%. The Lemon Amiga crew currently gave this score 72%, so the average is 64, or in this case 6.5 out of 10, which means that this game is good and it's playable, and I'd recommend this for Tempest fans. And this is the wackiest game which does not involve Jeff Minter and Tempest, so if you do love the Tempest clones, this is the closest you'll get without llamas and camels in it. And apart from that, it's a great game, and I really do love the speech sound effects, and of course the next generation Engage is always fun to hear.
Engage.
That's the end of my skills playing this game, and that means that we have to return to that high score table. We've run out of continues as well, so unfortunately we don't really gain too much of an advantage in this game, but there are level skip passwords, and it's really good to enter those passwords to skip through those levels, all of which are on the Lemon Amiga website. So thank you once again for viewing another Lemon Amiga play guide and review. See you again in the next series. Thank you.